Welcome to Local Heroes here on WKFK DTV7, where we interview veterans of the military and we bring you their stories, unedited and unchanged. So don't go away. We'll be right back with a very interesting story from one of our local veterans. Hello and welcome to Local Heroes here from the GI Museum and on WKFK TV7 today. I have the honor of talking to Mr. Granville Crane of Gulfport, Mississippi. Mr. Crane is a survivor of the sinking of the USS Indianapolis, a time in our history that we all need to appreciate very much because they took the components of the atomic bomb to the island of Tinian, and that ended World War II for the United States and saved generations to come. And Mr. Crane, I can't thank you enough for being here. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. You're welcome.
Well, let's get started in talking to you about how you got into the United States Navy in World War II.
Well, Pearl Harbor came on December 7, 1941. My brother and I was very patriotic, and he joined the Air Force and become a pilot. But I have to tell you, he washed out. He couldn't fly.
Okay.
He went under a bridge, as they called him, with his plane. But I was still patriotic. He stayed in the Air Force, though, in the States. He didn't go overseas or anything. And I couldn't get in the service because of my being so young. And I kept trying to get in. Nobody would listen to me. So I finally got permission, my parents, to sign for me. And I was a big old strapping boy, big, tall, you know. And they needed men on that ship in the Navy very badly. And they let me in and tried me out, I guess.
Well, let's tell everybody how old you were.
16.
16 years old, and you go in the Navy.
Yes.
During one of the most tumultuous times in the United States history because you're so patriotic.
Well, thank you.
That's just a product of everybody from that generation. You're the greatest generation.
I believe it was.
Now, you got in the Navy, and then you didn't go for any kind of advanced training. You went straight to a ship.
That's right.
And that ship happened to be?
The Indianapolis. It's USS, stands for United States Ship. And she was a flagship of the U.S. Navy. And she was the President Roosevelt and different presidents, you know, how they'd like to ride around on a ship. So I was in Admiral Spruant's Navy, Fifth Fleet, Admiral Halsey, and so on like that. All the time I was in the Navy. But I was on the old Indy when it went down. Of course, being disabled, I couldn't stay in the Navy. And they discharged me and gave me all the Purple Hearts and everything ready.
But what did you think of this ship when you first saw it?
Oh, it was beautiful.
You're probably 16, 17-year-old kid, really.
Right.
And you show up and there's this huge, beautiful cruiser there.
I couldn't get over it. I fell in love with it. And I loved every minute of the time, but that was my home for a long time, years and years.
And when you first got on the ship, what was your job? What were you doing?
I was just a regular sailor, you know, the seaman, they call it, seaman, third class. And then they gave me an engine room job down in the engine room. I didn't like that. They put me in a fire room. I didn't like that. They put me in the water tender, a job of having salt water being into fresh water, you know. I didn't like that. But when those boys wanted me to go over on the islands, you know, for liberty after the war had gone, you know, ceased on the islands, and they liked me so much, they said, we've got to have you as a, you know, we call it a policeman's job. And that's what a Master of Arms was.
So you got to be a Master of Arms. But let's go back. Let's talk about the engine room job. How was that? What were you doing down there?
Well,
I call it down there because it's down below deck.
Down below deck,
and
about
it
3
is
or 4.
Hot.
And it's dirty. We had the job of cleaning up the oil spills down in the bilges, we call it. That's the bottom of the ship, where the screws went around all the time, you know. And the steam turbines and all was down there just filthy. It was my job to clean those bilges. And I didn't like that so well. So I got transferred to another division.
Okay. And then the water tender section. Now, most people don't know it, but you can't make salt water. You can't use salt water to make steam.
No, sir.
So you have to distill the salt water, make fresh water, and you use that to make the steam.
You're right, Doug. Quite a process. But that wasn't for me. It wasn't my job I liked.
You didn't like that either because it obviously was probably a very laborious job. It wasn't, it was hot.
It was.
And it was probably pretty labor intensive, wasn't it?
It was.
Now, because you were making fresh water from salt water, you guys couldn't always use a lot of fresh water, could you?
No, sir.
So life aboard a ship is not as glamorous back in World War II as it may seem in some of the movies, is it?
No.
Well, tell us about your living situation, where your bunk was, and how that was being on that ship, and what your conditions as far as your living was how that went.
Well, there's 2 or 3 bunks all tied together on one side of the compartment in the ship, where we were. And I always had the disadvantage to have the top bunk. Always liked the bottom, but they wouldn't put me up. He wouldn't put me down on the bottom. They put me up there on the top, and every movement, made the top worse than what it was. And we had chow, which I didn't like very well.
You didn't like the food on the ship?
No, sir. Sometimes we'd stay out 18 months without any fresh vegetables, food, or anything. It was very bad. We had to get horse meat to eat over, in other countries. They didn't have anything but horse meat, kangaroo meat, and things of that sort wherever our ship would go. And no fresh vegetables hardly. And we had Spam. I got so tired of Spam I couldn't eat silk cake. But we had some good sailors on that ship that, would help us, and we made it just fine. Tough.
Do you remember your first campaign? Now, that's the
Yes.
first battle that you were in.
Yes,
on
sir.
board the USS Indianapolis.
Would you believe it was here in America? Yes, sir. Attu. That's way up there in Alaska.
Aleutian Island.
That's right. And the stormy weather was bad. We lost more men that would fall off the ship in that rough weather, And it was so frigid weather, so cold that it wouldn't last over 12 minutes, and they'd die. And we couldn't get them because of the waves up and down, so bad the wind was taking the waves. But anyway, we lost a lot of men that got off the ship on account of falling off the ship. But it was rocky, and we finally got in control of Attu and the places that we would bombard, from our ship. We had 6 guns that would shoot 20 miles on our ship, 20 miles apiece. And that's what we'd do mainly for some of the islands, that we had a campaign, had really bad, scary places to go to.
So you were at Attu, you provided naval gunfire support to the,
Yes,
to the
sir.
troops on the
Yes,
fighting the Japanese.
yes.
The Japanese had invaded.
We got them out there.
Yes, you did. Yes, you did. That's actually part of the United States.
That's right.
Now, after that, where did you go from Attu?
We went to South Pacific, yes, sir, and we stayed there till the ship went down. All the different islands had major battles, 10 major battles.
After Attu, what operation did you go to?
The next one in line is on down there. What is it?
Gilbert Island?
Yes, sir. It's there on the list.
Yes, sir.
We went to the Gilbert Islands, and that was pretty rough, I tell you. First bad fight that I ever was involved in, but we had a lot of boys killed on that island.
Yes, sir. And you were again providing naval gunfire
Yes,
support
sir.
for the boys on the island.
Exactly.
But the Japanese aircraft, if they attacked the fleet, you would provide anti-aircraft fire.
Certainly. And suicide planes.
Yes. Now, what was your battle station? Whenever an attack occurred on the USS Indianapolis,
Yes,
where
sir.
did you have to go, and what was your job?
Like I told you before, Doug, I went to the fantail. That was my battle station.
That's the very back end of the ship.
Yes, sir,
People
the
don't know what the fantail is.
stern.
Yes, the stern.
Jumping off place. But there was a gun out there on the back, but I didn't man the gun, but I was in charge of it.
So you were in charge of making sure the gun was operating, the crew was
Ready.
there, and the ammunition was getting there, and
Exactly.
you were basically the person in charge of the gun in this
Captain.
operation.
Mhm.
The gun captain. Okay, that's the word I was looking for. And you continued to do that the whole time you were on board the ship
Well,
until you got to be the master at arms
Bastard
policeman.
Arms then.
How many cells did you have on the ship? For
2,
2 cells.
always crowded.
Always crowded, always crowded. Now you went from the Gilberts to the Marshall Islands,
Marshall Islands.
and you were doing that again. Same thing,
Same
naval
thing.
gunfire support.
And we did go ashore. Some of our men did. The various jobs we had to do.
Uh-huh. Did you make it ashore on any of these?
Oh, yes, sir. Nearly every one of them.
Yeah.
We'd go ashore. They'd ask if we wanted to go ashore. We wanted to get some souvenirs.
Souvenirs, that's right. You know what? GIs don't fight wars for their country. They fight them for the souvenirs.
There you go. That's pretty good.
And next is Ulithi. Yeah.
I can't read from
Yeah,
it.
and then the Marianas.
Marianas.
Tell us about the Marianas. The Marianas is really famous for something called the Marianas Turkey Shoot.
Yes, sir. That's where the Japanese really had a heyday with us, those suicide planes. And we had our fill of those people. And we had Japanese suicide men, like they have Al-Qaeda and all. They'd swim out there from the island. They knew that they was about whipped, the fight. And one got on our ship. And we had to search the ship to find out where he was. But anyway, he finally jumped off. We never did get a hold of him. But he scared the rest, of the sailors.
Well, Mr. Crane, we're going to have to take a short break right here.
Okay.
And we'll be right back with more with Mr. Granville Crane here on Local Heroes, Survivor of the Sinking of the USS Indianapolis. Don't go away. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Local Heroes here on WKFK TV7. We're talking to Mr. Granville Crane. He is a survivor of the sinking of the USS Indianapolis. Mr. Crane, before the break, we were talking about some of the campaigns, and I want to ask you about the Tarawa campaign. It was particularly vicious.
It was.
Lost a lot of men there.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. We lost more than the Japanese did because different tactics didn't work out.
Yeah.
But what really helped us more than anything is bombarding from our ship and other ships with these high-powered guns, And, of course, the overshoot, that's what happened. The overshoot of these guns killed a lot of our men. And that is a terrible thing.
Yes, sir, but what you have to think, if you hadn't been there, it might have been worse.
Oh, yeah, it would have.
So y'all spent time off the coast of this island, Tarawa,
Right.
and you were providing naval gunfire support day after day after day during this campaign. Well, and let's pick up another one. We left off on our list at the Marianas, and then you went to the Battle of the Philippine Sea.
Yes. Now, that was all from our ship. We shot down the planes,
Yes.
the suicide planes and all, and it was a fierce battle. But we didn't have any islands to engage in, and go to shore with. But it was bad.
Were you actually at the invasion of the Philippines?
No, sir, I
Okay.
didn't go to the Philippines.
Okay. Just the Philippine Sea. Okay.
Yes.
And then we got the Tinian campaign. That was a pretty...
Oh, I tell you what, I love that island.
You love the island of Tinian.
I tell you why. The airstrip that we worked after we occupied, they got fastly on the construction to make that airstrip the longest one that they could make on a small island for the B-29. that took the atomic bomb to Hiroshima. We were so proud of that it's that close to the mainland of Japan. And we had an airplane that could take our bombs over there, without much trouble and drop the atomic bomb to end the war.
Now, the airstrip actually went from is on one end of the island where the land started,
Yes,
and went all the way to the other end of the island where the land stopped.
You're
When
right.
the B-25 finally got airborne, if he didn't get airborne that last few feet, he was in the water.
He was.
So, but why you like that island? You went ashore on Tinian.
Yes, but the thing of it is, I liked it because the airplane,
Oh, that was
carrying our cargo, that helped win the war ultimately,
yes, yeah. The B-29s were flying out of there to Japan.
Yes, sir.
Did you ever see any of those B-29s taking off and
No,
going?
sir, I didn't. They wouldn't allow me to go over there. So secret, a secret
okay.
mission.
And what did you do when you went ashore on some of these islands? You went ashore on a lot of them.
Well, like I say, I was looking for souvenirs.
Souvenirs, is that all? Okay. Were you looking for a good mess hall too?
Well, they didn't have any.
Didn't have any. Okay. All right. You go from Tinian to the island of Iwo Jima.
Iwo Jima. Now that was a tough one. Iwo Jima. I'm telling you, that's a bad one.
Yes.
And that's the one we put the flag up.
Yes, and you were telling me before the interview started that you could actually see that flag on that island.
We did. It was up on top of the highest mountain on the.
Did you watch the flag being raised?
Yes, sir. We watched it through.
How did that make you guys feel to see the American
it was
flag finally
wonderful.
flying over that island?
It made us so happy we couldn't hardly stand it after working so hard and fighting so hard, fierce fighting. We finally got secured to that island. Yes, sir.
So you witnessed it going up.
Yes, sir.
Did they announce it on the ship
Oh, they did.
that the flag was being raised
Everybody
over
was
you?
happy, jumping.
And you were at your battle station on the
Battle
Fantail?
station. Of course, we couldn't leave that battle station.
Which brings me to this point. How long were you at your battle station at a time? 10 hours, 12 hours?
4 on and 4 off.
4 on and 4
hours
off.
and 4 hours off.
Unless there was something going down like a Japanese
yes, sir.
kamikaze
That's
attack,
emergency.
you could not leave your battle station.
No, sir.
Sometimes that went on for hours and hours and hours and hours.
Days.
Were the kamikaze attacks bad at Iwo Jima?
Yes, sir.
They were even worse the next campaign that you went to, Okinawa,
You're right there.
because the Japanese were absolutely desperate to stop
They
you.
were into the war. They were desperate. They'd do anything, to bomb us and get us out of the way.
How did it feel to try to fight somebody who was bent on committing suicide in order to ram his plane into your ship?
Well, it was bad, Doug. I mean, these people, they wouldn't give up. I don't care if they was in a hole over there in the land. They wouldn't give up. I mean, they wanted to die for their emperor, and they just didn't have no give up in them. They would go down fighting.
So y'all had numerous kamikaze attacks when you
Yes,
were
we
offshore.
did.
Yeah.
Yes, we did.
And in March 1945, one of them actually hit you.
It did.
Well, where were you that day that aircraft hit the ship? Were you back on your battle station on the Fantail?
No, sir. I was below decks. I was below decks at the time. But I wasn't in the mess hall where the bomb came through, and go to the bottom of the ship. But we all felt the concussion of it. They closed all the compartments and everything. But some of the buddies I knew, my shipmates, was killed with that attack of that suicide plane.
Yeah, there's about 29 of them in the mess hall.
Yes, sir, there was. They were eating, right.
And the bomb went right through the mess hall.
Right through the mess hall.
And it went all the way through the bottom
All
of
the
the
way
ship.
through, and then exploded
Under the ship.
under the ship.
Now, you lost your saltwater distilling plant.
Yes, sir, we did.
You lost some of your fire rooms and some of your
Yeah.
engine rooms. You were
Very
pretty
high,
much
heavy damage.
very heavy damage.
But they patched us up. They patched our ship up enough to go back to the States. We went back to San Francisco, Mare Island, and there they worked us over and did a fast job because they had secret mission for us to have to take the atomic bomb, but they didn't tell us what it was.
Yeah.
And we took those 2 atomic bombs, and by the way, I believe with all of my heart, they can't prove, they never did tell us, but they said we only took 1 atomic bomb, we had 2.
Well, other men that I've talked to
I know.
tell me that both of those bombs were on that ship, and that all of the components for both those bombs were on that ship.
That's my conviction.
And I've talked to Mr. Maurice Bell, who has passed away, but
Yes.
Mr. Bell tells me that both those bombs were on that
believe
ship.
it.
And I believe the people that were actually there.
Yes.
So I believe that
ought
those
to know
bombs
it.
were on that ship. Now, when you got back to Mare Island, did you get any liberty? Did you get to go home, or did you stay right there on the ship?
They wouldn't let me go home, but my folks came. I'm from Texas, and my Texas family came out there and stayed with me, but I couldn't go home.
And were you master at arms at this time?
Yes, sir, but I was under secret orders. Nobody knew anything. We couldn't get liberty. They patched that ship up, and they told us to be quiet, not to say anything, because it depends on every day that we in that shipyard getting patched up. There'd be one day the war would go on and on, but every time that they'd turn us loose for the days, to go back to sea, it'd be closer to the end of the war. That's all they'd tell us.
And you had no idea what they meant by that.
No, indeed.
But did you know that there was something special in store for the Indianapolis?
I thought so.
You did?
I thought so.
Where were you the day that the big crates got loaded onto the ship, onto the aircraft hangar?
Doug, all the brass would come in. the big officer, would come in and watch those crates and everything. We knew that something was up when we saw all those admirals and all that. And they put those crates on our ship, and they wouldn't let us go near the crates at all. They had the automatic weapons, the Marines all around them all the time. And we knew something heavy was up, but they wouldn't tell nobody.
You had no idea what it was?
No, sir.
But if somebody would have walked up to you and said, Master at Arms, we got 2 atomic bombs on our ship, would you even know what an atomic bomb was at that time?
I'm afraid not.
But the mission had to be secret.
It did.
And it was. You didn't even know.
No, I didn't.
Now, one of the most popular rumors that went about the ships, and ships are known for scuttlebutt, and you know that because you were on a ship, was that in that crate, those crates were full of scented toilet paper going to General Douglas MacArthur.
That's what we heard.
So that was the most popular one. There were some others.
Yes.
But that was the one that I think everybody chose to believe.
I think so.
So you get these crates on the ship under great secrecy. You have to know something's up. They're telling you that for every day that the Indianapolis is in dry dock getting patched up. Now, when you say patched up, they didn't fully fix the ship. They just made it serviceable enough to get it back to sea.
Right. But it was so fast. It's the fastest heavy ship in the fleet. And that's why they chose us. And the very fact that we had the record of going from the States to Tinian, that saw the record right there. We still have it.
Yeah, you set the steaming record for a cruiser, and it still holds true today.
Yes, sir.
No other cruiser's ever done that. Y'all should be proud of that.
We are.
But the feeling of the crew, what was that? How did the crew feel? How did y'all feel about this? Were you apprehensive? Were you proud? What were you thinking about this mission?
Well, we were proud because we saw some people there that said that they were of the Navy, and we knew that they weren't Navy men. I mean, they had uniforms and everything, but we knew that they didn't talk like Navy men. And they were these scientists that took care of the atomic bomb and all the components, and everything that went off the ship when the crates went off, when the atomic bombs was taken off, unloaded.
Now we're hearing something, folks, that's not in the history books. Scientists dressed in Navy uniform
Yes, sir.
went aboard the USS Indianapolis with those crates,
To the end.
rode the ship to Tinian, and got off when the crates left.
That's right.
That is not written in the history
No,
books.
sir.
And you're hearing it here on Local Heroes. And unfortunately, Mr. Crane, we're out of time for this show, but I promise you we're going to have another one, and you don't want to miss it because you're going to come back and hear more about what you're not reading in the history books. So join us again next time for the continuation of this story of Mr. Granville Crane, survivor of the USS Indianapolis.